Good morning. Welcome to my channel, Over 60 Scene, and I'm Wilma. And the video I'm going to do today is a little different than a lot of my previous videos. I decided I want to talk about when I was a young adult and my experience with anxiety and subsequently borderline anorexia. It's so hard to know where to begin. I guess to begin would be my school age years. As far back as I can remember, I always was anxious. Only when I was a child, I didn't know that's what it was called. I didn't know anything about anxiety. I didn't know that that was something that was to be avoided or treated. I just knew that when I went to school, well, actually 24/7, except when I was sleeping, I always had butterflies in my stomach. My stomach always had butterflies. It was like that feeling you get right before you go down the big roller coaster hill, even when you enjoy going on roller coasters, you get those butterflies because you know what's coming. It was like that, only it wasn't, how do I say it? It wasn't an enjoyable feeling, and it wasn't a negative feeling. It just was. It was just my day-to-day feeling, always. And I thought everyone felt that way. I didn't know that maybe that's not normal, especially in childhood. I did okay in school. I graduated high school at age 17. I wasn't quite 18 yet. I was almost 18. A few more months and I would be turning 18. And in hindsight, I think I would have done better to have waited to be put into kindergarten when I was just starting school, so that I would, do hopefully better, and maybe a little more maturity, because I think I was pretty immature when I was graduating at age 17. And some of my classmates were 18 and had been 18 for almost a full year or something when they graduated. So there's a big difference there. But okay, so I graduated. And I got a summer job working in an ice cream parlor, which was a big step for me because I hadn't had a job before that except babysitting for neighborhood kids. And the fact that I went and applied and actually got the job was like a huge thing for me. It was huge. And I enjoyed the job, but it was another thing where, okay, there I am with the butterflies in my stomach. I'm just sort of pushing through it, just always pushing through it, but never really able to relax and feel like, oh, okay, I've got this now. I always felt like I was on edge, and every day was a challenge. Every day was a challenge to overcome. And I'm not sure if that's how you're supposed to feel when you're either almost an adult or just becoming an adult. I don't know. I was going to college. I went to a local community college. So this was in 1976. So I graduated in 1976 in June. Then in September of 76, I started at a local community college. And that was another hurdle to just push through as far as the anxiety, because every day it's like I wanted to run away. I just wanted to run away and not have the responsibility. But there was always like this little voice in my head that was like, just keep going, just keep going. The voice wasn't saying, you'll be fine, you can do it. The voice was just saying, push forward, push forward, push forward. And I so wanted to not do that. I just wanted to, I don't know, just not have that responsibility. Went to grab some coffee because my mouth was dry. So I was going to community college, and the ice cream parlor job was just a summer job, so I wasn't working at that point when I was going to college. But someone had recommended me for a job at an insurance company, and it was a large insurance company, one that everyone knows and has heard of. And so this person that recommended me, I went on the interview and I got the job. And so this was my first office job. Now, I didn't have a lot of office training from high school. I did know how to type, but there was other programs that a lot of my friends had taken in high school that were, office focused, like, that just all the different skills that you would need to work in an office. Well, I didn't have those because I had just taken more general courses in high school. So that in and of itself, there was another hurdle as far as my anxiety to work through. Just the whole starting to navigate, the office politics. And computers were new then. They were just starting to be used. I started out entering claims in the computer. So I had to learn how to use this computer, which was, an old, I assume, DOS system like they had back then. And I did okay. And they sent me for training seminars so that I could learn to be a claims examiner, which was great. And they even had somebody come in to the office and train me and several other girls so that we could eventually become claims examiners. And so that was really a good start for what I thought, with no previous office experience and an entry-level position. I think that was a good start. But again, the anxiety was always present. And it would manifest in things like being afraid to ask a question if you didn't understand something, especially with the computers, because that was all so new to me. I had zero computer training in high school. I don't think they even had it at my high school at all yet. I think they may have had it if you had gone to the vocational school, maybe they had it, but not at my high school. So that was all something new to learn. And there were times that I realized, I think I've been doing this wrong, and just thinking, oh my gosh, I've done I've done all this data entry, and I think I did all of them wrong because one little box wasn't checked, or I can't even remember now what it was. So that created more anxiety in me. Anytime I thought that I had made a mistake, it was just, the butterflies were just more active. So eventually that office moved to a new location, much farther away from my home. I was still living at home with my parents at that time. I think I said it wrong. I started working at the insurance company in 1977. So I had gone to the community college for a full year before I started at the insurance company. So I had that year under my belt. And then I did work and go part-time to school in the evening for a while too. So, but anyway, but back to how I felt when I was working in the office. It was just, I don't know, I always felt like everyone else did a better job than I did. Everyone else understood it better than I did. Everyone else was better at the computer than I was. And again, the anxiety was always there in the background. But again, I just kept pushing through because, I knew that this was what adults do. This is, these are the types of jobs that adults have. And I knew there was room to move up in that company if I kept training and, there was opportunities for advancement for sure. And back then, that was when they would actually give you a pension. Not a 401k, an actual pension. But at age 19, I couldn't appreciate that. I couldn't appreciate that, what a great benefit that was. It was all about how I felt, like the butterflies in my stomach. Was I making mistakes? Did they know I was making mistakes? Am I going to get fired? What are my parents going to think if I get fired because I think I've been making mistakes? I don't know. It was, with anxiety, you just start to spiral. You start to spiral sometimes. So how that anxiety started to manifest with me, aside from the butterflies, was with my eating. I wanted to have a nice figure, which I did. I was never heavy. As a child, I was always running around, full of energy, burning off the calories, whatever I ate, never had to worry about it. But, little by little, pounds were kind of creeping on. And I was what I thought. I was maybe, 10 pounds overweight. In my mind, I was 10 pounds overweight. In hindsight, I wasn't overweight at all. I was probably just perfect. So, but I thought I was. So it was easy when you're working in an office to just skip lunch because the office building I worked in did not have a lunch counter. So if you wanted to grab something, you had to go out and go down the street, and I think there was a Dairy Queen and there was, a couple things. Or you had to bring your lunch. And it was just easy for me just to skip lunch because I was there and I was working, and so I would just take my break. And I smoked at that time too. I was smoking. I guess maybe I should talk about that a little bit, but I started smoking probably it was after high school. I didn't smoke in high school. It was after high school, probably when I started going to school, when I started going to the community college. A lot of kids smoked, and so I started smoking too. And I remember that feeling of smoking, of drawing in that cigarette smoke and it being like, ah, it made me feel better. It did. It made me feel better. And I don't know if I want to say it calmed the butterflies, but it did seem to help. So I was smoking, and this was back when you could smoke in the office. It was perfectly acceptable to smoke in the office. You didn't have to go to a smoking area. You could smoke right at your desk. So that's what I would do. Lunchtime, I would just maybe sit and have a few cigarettes and, just skip lunch altogether, you know. And I kind of skipped over talking at all about my parents. They're both gone now, so I'm not going to hurt anybody's feelings by talking about them. But they both had a lot of health issues. They were older parents. My father was much older than my mom. And so my whole childhood was different illnesses with them back and forth. You know, one would be in the hospital, then the other one would be in the hospital. Then, there was just always something going on with them. They were not alcoholics. They were not drug users, although they were both on prescription drugs that were considered pretty heavy hitting by today's standards, because that's what the doctors did back then. They prescribed these drugs for various things, high blood pressure. And unbeknownst to me, I'm backtracking a little bit, when I was in high school, my father was diagnosed with colon cancer. And for whatever reason, this information was kept from me. I wasn't told that that's what it was. It wasn't explained. I wasn't sat down and explained that, look, your father has cancer. Cancer is a potentially fatal disease. These things were not spelled out at all. It was all very just whatever I happened to absorb. My father also had really severe rheumatoid arthritis, which affected his mobility, which prevented him from doing a lot of things that a normal parent would do with a child, activities and things like that. So that's just a little background on what was going on in my childhood, which I can see where, all the illnesses could have caused anxiety. Just the uncertainty, not knowing what was going to happen, who was going to go in the hospital next, when, what was going to happen, where was I going to be, did I, the unknown is always, I think, an anxiety for a child. So anyway, back to being a young adult and working in the office. So at the insurance company, they moved the office to a different location, which was farther from my home, a longer drive, which was fine. It wasn't as convenient as the other location, but it was fine. But then with the move was a whole new computer system. Oh boy. I was used to the old computer system, and now we have a whole new computer system. And it was much different, so much different. A lot to learn, a lot to understand, and it was just, for me, it was just overwhelming. It was just overwhelming. And here we go again, the anxiety crept in, and I just wanted to bail out. I just wanted to bail. It was the fight or flight kind of feeling, and I wanted the flight. I wanted to just not be there. And so, even though that was a really good job, and in hindsight, if I'd have stayed with that company for 30 years, I could have been retired, at age 50 with a pension and able to do from that point on whatever I wanted to do. But because of the anxiety and just not that little voice that kept saying, just work through it, just work through it. This time, that little voice said, just bail. This is just too much for you. This is just too much. And so I quit. I quit without having another job. And that was a turning point in my life that I wish I could go back and do that differently. But it was the anxiety was running the show at that point. The anxiety was. So I took a job in retail at a department store in fine jewelry, which I really enjoyed. It was a long drive to get to where this mall was. It was one of the, I think at the time, it was the biggest mall in the country. So it was quite a thing to work there. And I started out in sales and, going to different departments. And then they asked me, did I want to work in fine jewelry? It was a leased department. And I said, sure, that sounds great. Because, I didn't have to fold a bunch of clothes or straighten a bunch of racks. It was all kind of small items that I had to, keep track of. So I was 20, and I had previously met someone that I was dating. And that really kind of helped with my anxiety somewhat, because it felt like I had somebody that was supporting me, that was in my corner, that was all for me. They were in favor of me and loved everything I did and gave me positive vibes and all that. So that helped. I mean, I honestly say finally having a relationship helped with the anxiety. I had a friend who worked at a radio station, a very popular radio station in Cleveland, Ohio. And in fact, that radio station, that TV show WKRP in Cincinnati was loosely based on that radio station. It was WMMS in Cleveland. Anyway, so I had a friend that worked there, and we got a lot of concert tickets. And her and I would go probably from 1977 and early 78. We were going to concerts, all the time, a couple times a month or something like that. And just getting out and being with other young adults And just being in that whole vibe and that whole, time of my life was really great. I mean, that was wonderful. I started to kind of come out of my shell and feel and gain some confidence. Maybe just like, oh, okay, this is my world. This is my, this is what I'm supposed to be doing at this time of life. But then the anxiety was maybe starting to lessen somewhat, but the whole anorexia, or wanting to be thin and have a good figure, and there was kind of a pressure at that time for that, because I mean, all the models you saw were super thin, and then disco was the thing, to be a good dancer and to be thin. It was kind of like the culture. And so the anorexia kind of started at that time. And nobody talked about it. I mean, it wasn't a thing. It wasn't until one day when I was sitting in a doctor's office and I read an article on anorexia that I even realized, oh my gosh, do I have this? Because when I was working in the insurance office and skipping lunch, I had maybe lost 5 pounds. In my mind, I was 10 pounds overweight, and I had lost 5 pounds from skipping lunch. So then it wasn't a far stretch to skip breakfast also. So I was basically eating like one meal a day, like coming home and eating supper, and that was it. And then if I did eat anything during the day, it was just very, very small. And so basically at my thinnest, I had gotten myself down to 112 pounds, which I was 5'7.5".